Picture this. You finally own a beautiful stretch of land, your own quiet haven. You poured years of effort into earning it, and it's supposed to be your private retreat. Then, out of nowhere, people begin using it like it's a public playground. Random strangers stroll across it, cut through like it's a shortcut, toss their garbage around, and treat your property like it belongs to everyone. So you do what any reasonable person would do. You install a sign. Nothing aggressive, nothing dramatic. Just a clear, polite, no trespassing sign. Simple fix, right? Oh, if only it were that easy. That modest little sign didn't solve the problem. It detonated one, because the moment it went up, it disturbed a very specific hornet's nest. And that nest goes by one name, the Homeowners Association, the HOA. Within hours, my phone lit up. On the other end was the HOA president. Let's call her Karen. Not her real name, but you already know exactly the type. Her tone carried that syrupy, self-righteous indignation, reserved for people who think they run the world. According to her, my sign was a direct violation of community aesthetics. Community aesthetics. Apparently, the visual symmetry of the neighborhood mattered more than the clearly defined boundary of my own property. I tried explaining the trespassing problem, but reasoning with her felt like arguing with a brick wall. Not just any brick wall, a smug, patronizing one. She demanded I remove the sign immediately or face consequences. I calmly told her the sign was staying. It was on my land, and it was there for my security. That's when this went from absurd to unbelievable. A few days later, I was outside when a car screeched to a stop in front of my property. Out stepped Karen and two other HOA board members. They didn't hesitate. They marched straight past my brand new sign and onto my lawn, gesturing angrily and clearly spoiling for a fight. Karen immediately launched into a tirade, accusing me of defying the HOA and insisting the sign had to come down. I walked over, steady and composed, and said, "First of all, you're trespassing right now, the very thing the sign warns against. Second, you have zero authority over what I choose to do on my private property." That didn't sit well. One of the other board members, a guy who permanently looked like he'd smelled spoiled milk, actually scoffed and snapped, "This isn't just your land. It's part of the community, and you're damaging it. Damaging it by trying to stop strangers from wandering through." The logic was non-existent. They became increasingly hostile, stepping closer, raising their voices. I didn't budge. I kept repeating that they were trespassing and needed to leave. Then Karen did something I never saw coming. With a smug grin, she pulled out her phone and declared, "That's it. I'm calling the police. We have a trespasser creating a disturbance." I stared at her in disbelief. "A trespasser? I live here. You're the ones on my property." She just kept smiling and began feeding the dispatcher a completely fabricated story about a hostile man trespassing on community land and refusing to leave. I was stunned. They were standing on my lawn, accusing me of trespassing on my own lawn. The audacity was staggering. In that moment, I realized this wasn't about a sign anymore. This was about control, and I wasn't about to hand it over. While we waited for the police, I went inside, grabbed my phone to record everything, and pulled out my property deed along with the original plot map from closing day. When two patrol cars pulled up, I felt that nervous knot in my stomach. Even though I knew I was right, Karen and her allies rushed toward the officers, spinning a dramatic tale about me being unstable and threatening. They pointed at me and said, "That's him, officer. He's trespassing." One officer approached me carefully. "Sir, we received a report about a trespasser causing a disturbance. Can you explain what's happening?" I took a steady breath. "Officer, I'm glad you're here. My name is Mark. I own this property." I handed him my driver's license with my address clearly displayed. These HOA board members walked onto my private property, ignored my no trespassing sign, and refused to leave when asked. They then called you and claimed I'm the trespasser. The officer glanced at them, then back at me, confusion written all over his face. "So this is your home? You reside here?" "Yes, sir," I said, "and I have documentation." I gave him the deed and plot map. As he reviewed them, Karen kept interrupting. "He doesn't understand the HOA rules. We have jurisdiction here." The officer raised his hand for silence and continued examining the paperwork. After a few minutes, he walked back to the HOA trio. His tone had shifted. He wasn't mediating anymore. He was annoyed. "Ma'am, these documents confirm this is his private property. You're the ones trespassing." The expression on Karen's face was priceless. Shock, outrage, fury all colliding at once. She stammered about bylaws and community guidelines, but the officer shut it down. HOA rules do not override state law or private property rights. You were asked to leave and refused. That qualifies as trespassing. Then he turned to me. "Sir, would you like to press charges?" Oh, I was tempted, deeply tempted. But escalating it into a drawn-out legal war didn't appeal to me. I had a smarter play. "No, officer," I said evenly. "I just want them off my property and to stop harassing me." Then I faced the HOA board. "But understand this clearly. This is your only warning. If any of you step foot here again without my permission, I will press charges for trespassing and harassment. I will also file a formal complaint against the HOA for abuse of power. Is that understood?" They stood frozen, speechless. The officer instructed them to leave immediately. Defeated and humiliated, they shuffled back to their car without meeting my eyes. The officers apologized for confusion, assured me I was fully within my rights, and documented a false report in their system. But I wasn't finished. The next morning, my attorney drafted a cease and desist letter to the HOA board. It meticulously outlined the incident, the trespassing, the harassment, the false police report. It made it crystal clear that all future communication must go through legal counsel and that any retaliation over the sign would trigger immediate legal action. We attached a copy of the police report documenting their fabricated claims. The fallout was spectacular. Word spread quickly. Other homeowners were furious when they learned the board had called the police on a resident for standing on his own property. Neighbors I barely knew came by to show support and share their own horror stories about HOA overreach. The pressure intensified. At the next community meeting, one I attended with my lawyer, the board had no choice but to issue a public apology. Shortly after, Karen and the 2 board members involved resigned out of sheer embarrassment. The sign? It's still there. And since then, not a single person, stranger or HOA, has stepped foot on my property without permission. Because sometimes standing your ground isn't just about winning one argument. It's about drawing firm boundary and reminding those who wield a little authority that it does, in fact, have limits. The legal fees weren't cheap, but the peace, the respect, and the undeniable satisfaction, worth every penny. Thanks for listening to today's story. If you've ever dealt with an overreaching HOA, drop your experience in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories about people standing up for themselves. See you in the next one.